David?
I think just following up on that, I mean, some of the most successful KPIs have been those from the Construction Industry Council, the design quality indicators. And in fact, those are selling abroad now. I see America's, they just bought licenses now to sell those in America. So they are spreading around the world. And they've got very clear KPIs to do with the latter stages, to do with handing over the building, the soft landings you may have heard of now. And it was interesting on the radio the other day, the Minister for Schools was actually talking about using now soft landings, which is where the contractors and the designers actually stay in the building, in an office in the building for 2 to 3 months with the people who are using the building, going to coffee with them, getting to know them, and they're actually there. And that's about as cheap as having to be recalled when things go wrong. And you can educate them in how the building should actually work, because people hopelessly underuse buildings. They just don't know how they work. So that's that. And then finally, the DQIs, taking your point on the satisfaction years on, is that the post-occupancy evaluation should be done 2 to 3 years afterwards. And a lot of the better clients now, and the better designers, and indeed the better contractors, are now signing up when they are appointed to being in contract right to 2 to 3 years on, and coming back and doing the post-occupancy evaluation when you've got a year's good data on how the building works, at least after it was taken over, after the first year, and you can learn lessons from it. So, and that's spreading now, and I think there's a lot more of that. The undergraduates are being taught it in all the best universities, I hope, and postgraduates are. So it is. There's no doubt some of these things are coming into the industry.
Okay, thank you, panel. What I'd like to do now is to open it up to the members of the audience. Can you please show if you want to make a point or raise an issue? Great, the lady there in the third row.
Liz Bennett, I come from a health and safety territory, but my question really is following on from Una's remarks about getting the KPI story, getting Latham, Egan, whatever it is that we're left with, out into the industry properly, right down through to smaller clients, and to the smaller suppliers in the industry. And I wonder whether some of the larger organisations would like to comment on how they feel they relate to the SMEs who are there in the first place because of their particular niche expertise, whether it's expertise to get a job done more quickly, more cheaply, or whether it's a special skill that they have in scaffolding or blacktop patching or whatever it may be. Very much needed in our industry, very much put upon by our industry, and it would be interesting to see the satisfaction level that they're expressing.
So kind of two issues, this dissemination of best practice more widely, that's the first point, yes? And then the treatment of SMEs given the much greater adoption of best practice, and maybe that being taken up to a larger extent by larger organisations, and therefore maybe easing smaller firms, smaller contracting companies and so on out of the supply chain.
Because they are part
Yeah.
of the team.
Any view on that, Andrew?
Certainly, yes. Well, I'm aware that SMEs are formed, the vast majority of the people who work in our industry, certainly in this region, I think nationally, so they are a crucial part of what we do. And the standards to which they work to, particularly with regard to health and safety, are key to the standards which exist within the industry. I know Constructing Excellence, the Regional Constructing Excellence organisation, is very keen on supporting SMEs, and Tom Harper is doing an awful lot of work in actually supporting that through various initiatives which are funded through the SWERDA organisation. For our own point of view, I mean, we have a very varied contractor supply chain from national contractors through to one-man bands, and they all provide a very important part of the service which our clients, which our building users require. So we use at the higher level we have framework contractors whom we work with their supply chains to make sure we're all working to reasonable standards, and we also work directly with all our smaller SMEs also in supporting them and explaining to them letting them know the standards which we expect them to work to when they are within our premises. And we try to work as closely as we possibly can with them to make sure they are aware of the standards. 4 years ago, we had an initiative where we paid for them all to go through the CHAS accreditation process as far as health and safety is concerned, and we have continued with that process so that we make sure that they are all up to that minimum standard. It's fairly basic, but it is a start, and we do try and work with them.
For our part, we run a series of continuous improvement groups, and they've been running now for the past 10 years. With main contractors, the main subcontractors, and the third tier contractors as well. And generally that is a cascade of where we see our KPIs, what we're trying to achieve in terms of our either longevity of the products or the quality of the products or the cost or the health and safety. We ask them for feedback. We've taken this as a direct copy from essentially the trading floor, where there's a lot of connection into third tier supply chain on the trading floor. And actually that's been quite successful, because under those continuous improvement groups, it comes as a forum, not just as a commercial forum, but actually as a trading ideas. How do we do this? How do we get things better? And actually that's been quite successful. And every now and then you have to agitate that, you have to get in there and direct it, but essentially we've gained a lot of benefit from that. And a lot of cost benefit as well, not just the programme or the quality aspects as well.
Thank you. Una?
No, I think what we may be picking up is that there's you know, as you're saying, the larger firms and the large public sector projects. And I'm sort of thinking about an example of one of the contractors coming and living with one of our tenants for the first year of moving into a new home. It probably wouldn't work. But you know, I think there's probably there's a very differential level of service, isn't there, an aftercare service? And I think Resi maybe has always been a bit of the poor relation. I don't know. We may explore it in the coming questions.
I think it'd be a lovely idea to have a contractor living in with Can I? Sorry.
Yeah, do you want to
sorry.
say something?
I mean, I just first of all, it's worth, I think, remembering that one of the main reasons for the fragmentation in our industry, which is by far the most fragmented of any construction industry and far most fragmented of any industry in Britain, one of the reasons how that came about was actually because companies did not want to and not willing to take responsibility for health and safety. And in those times, in the 50s and 60s, some of you may have read about it in the history books, then it was quite simple, because you only had responsibility for your own employees, no further, so that was fine. You then just subcontracted to the point now where there are on average 6 levels of subcontracting on the average £12 million site. So that's one of the reasons. But I think part of the answer to your question really is in the increased legislation and the power that's come. I mean, it was very important, for example, that there was a new post created of, and I don't know what the proper title is, and I'm sorry, you would do, but it's basically the health and safety chief for the construction industry. And that was a new post with a lot of power and a lot of funding and quite a big staff. And that's had quite a lot of effects. Because that person has quite a good deal of power. And not only sticks, but carrots, with now an ever-increasing number of awards for health and safety, and that's carrots as well as sticks. And I think finally, right down the supply chain, clients are wanting evidence at interview stage and, if you like, at pre-qualification, pre-qual stage, of wanting statistics right down the supply chain of safety background. And as a client, we would say, right, you're coming for interview for, let's say, a contractor, we will want to know, for the supply chain that you want to bring to this project, we want the records for the last 3 years, how many reportables have been for 100,000, whatever. And that is part of the interview, and marks given. So I think by carrots and sticks and the greater legislation and the greater resources put into it, it is beginning to permeate through.
Okay, another